Hi, welcome to this SQL tutorial video, and today I'm doing a video on SQL variables. A SQL variable is an object that stores a piece of data, and you will ideally use a variable to store a piece of data so that you can use the value in that variable throughout a piece of code. So in this tutorial, I'm going to explain how we create variables, why you might use a variable, and the rules around using variables. So on screen, I've got three quite straightforward pieces of SQL. They are returning three separate sets of results. The important thing to note here is that we've got this type condition here, and it's using a hard-coded value of enchantment in this example. So if I want to change that from enchantment to be something else, I mean, I can do it manually or I can do control replace, but let me just copy and paste to change this. Yep. And we run that and we get new sets of results where the type is instant. Okay, that's fine. It's fine in this case because there's only three pieces of SQL. But let's imagine we've got 1,000, 2,000 rows here of SQL, and throughout my SQL I've got this condition, and I want to change it every now and again to be something different, to give me some different outputs. So the best way to do that, rather than trying to rely on replacing, just in case you accidentally miss a value, by far the best way to do it is to use a variable. So at the top of this SQL, I'm going to create a variable, and the syntax that we use to create this variable is declare space, then all variable names begin with an at, so we put an at sign, and we need to give this variable a unique value that makes sense. So what I'm doing is I'm creating a variable that is going to be used with this type column condition. So I'm going to call my variable at type, and I'm going to give it a data type of varchar, and in this case varchar 15. Data types are important. When you create a variable, you need to kind of work out what it is you want that variable to do, which columns your variable is going to interact with, or which values, and create a relevant data type. So my type column is a varchar column. So I'm creating my variable to be a varchar. So right now I've created my variable, declare at type varchar 15. That syntactically works. If I execute that, SQL is happy with that syntax, but I haven't done anything yet with it. All I've done is created an object. If I want to give it a value, I do set, and then when I put at, it's going to offer me type because it knows, because of the line above, that type exists. Now, interesting thing to note, if I, at the top here, if I do set at, it's not going to offer me anything because SQL doesn't know yet in the order of this piece of code, this doesn't yet exist, this variable. So I can't add a value to it yet because it doesn't logically exist yet. So everything's got to be done in turn. So I'll delete that. I'll go to the line below and I will say set at. Now it says, oh yeah, I've got a variable here. Do you mean that variable? Yes, I do. I'll select that and I can say equals, and I will give it this value. We still haven't done anything yet with it. All we've done is declared a variable and given it the value. So if I just run this, it'll run it as it did before here, but all it's doing is it's still just running those three pieces of SQL because I'm not doing anything more yet with that variable. So what I need to do is I need to replace each of the hard-coded elements that I want to replace with my new variable. So instead of saying ft type equals and then single quotes, I can just put my variable name. And as I start typing it, it knows what I mean. So I want to get rid of this, and I'll put, and this, and I'll put. Now if I run that, it shows me the same results, no obvious difference, but it is now using my variable. And I can prove that by changing this value to be enchantment. And there we've got a new set of results. So let's imagine we want to create another variable, a variable that's going to interact with this column, the sum and value column. And this column is, it's a number, it's an integer column. So to create another variable, we don't need to put declare again. We've got declare already listed there. Then we've got our variable. What we can do, like we can in other kind of aspects of SQL, we can comma separate multiple objects. So in this case, we're going to create another variable. It's got to begin with the @ sign. We're going to call it summon because it's referencing our summon value column, and the data type is going to be int. Now we give that a value. Let's say we give it 3. Now in our SQL, we can now say and ft summon val is greater than @summon. This number, the number in this column, is greater than the number in this variable. So let's just copy that. And we run this. You can see now we're getting only values that are greater than 3. Or maybe we can say equals 3. You need to remember the data types that you're using here, and you've got options of signs to use with those data types. So if it is text, you can maybe get the length of a piece of text or a length of a variable. But if it is a number, you use that number and you can say where something is greater than or less than or equal to. So if I run this again, we've got anything that's equal to 3. If I change this to be 5, I don't know what results we'll get. Well, not a great deal for the first 2, but you can see now we're getting these results. So that's pretty straightforward. Let me just change this back to 2 so we get some nice and change this to greater than, so we get some results. Now then, a variable only exists when you're running the SQL. So in the same way, it's kind of following the order of SQL. So I couldn't assign values to these variables above them getting declared because they wouldn't exist logically in the SQL. So I'm now getting these errors here. @type doesn't exist, @summon doesn't exist. In that same way, they must exist before I assign a variable to them and before I can use them. So I can run this and it works, but I can't run just those 2 lines because if I do that, I'm going to get an error. And that's because it's only running those 2 lines, and @type and @summon are not declared in those 2 lines. They are declared in the line above. I'm not running that line. I'm not executing that line. I'm only executing these 2. So SQL doesn't know what I'm doing here. So I can't just run these 3 bits of SQL independently. I've got to run the whole lot for it to make logical sense. Now, it might be throughout your SQL that you want to know at given points. Maybe you've got an audit table or something. You want to know at given points what the value of your variable is. And I want to do another video where we assign values to variables using code rather than using hard-coded entries. So it might be that at some point in your code you want to output the value of your variable. And because these are objects, these 2 now, they exist as data objects, we can select them. So I can do select @type and I can run that and it says enchantment. I can even give it a value, a column header if you like, and there's type and enchantment, and I can add it as if I'm referencing a table, @summon, and I'll put summon, and if I run that, we get those values here. And if I change that to be something different and change that to be that, and we run that, then we get those there. And if I run the whole lot, we get a different set of results based on our variables. And that's the end of this tutorial on variables. I hope this introduction was informative and helpful. As always, thanks a lot for your time. If you've got any comments, please leave them. Any feedback is always appreciated. See you next time.